The night was quiet aboard the human exploration vessel Odyssey. Only the hum of the life support system filled the air. Captain Elias Ward lay on his bunk, half asleep, his mind still echoing with the sounds of the last mission. He had spent the last 2 days rescuing survivors from a collapsing alien outpost near the edge of Saturn's rings. The faces of those he had pulled from the wreckage still flashed before his tired eyes. He didn't think much about it. Helping others was simply what he did. But tonight was different. When the door slid open with a hiss, Elias sat up immediately. 3 alien guards stood at the entrance, tall and slender, their armor shining like liquid silver. Their glowing eyes stared down at him without expression. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air colder. "Captain Elias Ward," said the one in front. Its voice was strange, half echo, half whisper. But the translation device clipped to his ear converted it into perfect English. "You are summoned by royal decree. You will come with us at once." Elias frowned, swinging his legs off the bed. "Summoned? For what reason?" The guard tilted its head slightly, like it couldn't understand why a human would even ask. "You are called to the Hall of the Moon. The princess herself awaits you. By law, you must obey." He rubbed his temples, still groggy. "Wait, princess? What law are you talking about?" "The law of gratitude," said the guard. "You saved her life. And tonight you must please her in return." Elias froze. For a moment he thought he had misheard. "What did you say?" "The binding law demands it," the guard repeated calmly. "You are the chosen one for the ritual of honor. Refusal is not permitted." There was no emotion in its tone, no embarrassment, no humor, only duty. Elias felt his heart start to pound. "Look, I think there's been some mistake," he said quickly, raising his hands. "I didn't ask for any reward. I just did what anyone would do." But the guards didn't move. Their silver armor reflected his own face back at him, pale and confused. "Our princess was near death. You risked your vessel to save her. The law cannot be ignored. You will come." Elias exhaled slowly. He could see from their posture that arguing was useless. These weren't soldiers following orders, they were protectors following sacred tradition. "All right," he muttered. "Give me a minute to get dressed." The lead guard nodded once. "You have 5 minutes." When they left, Elias sat on the edge of his bunk for a moment, staring at the floor. Please their princess? He thought. What does that even mean? He had heard of alien customs before. Some were strange, some were dangerous, but this one sounded like a trap he didn't want to fall into. Still, he couldn't forget the image of her face when he had pulled her from the wreckage. A young alien woman with pale blue skin, half buried under twisted metal, her breathing faint, her eyes wide with fear. He had carried her himself through the collapsing tunnel, ignoring the burning heat and falling debris. When she finally woke in the med bay and whispered, "Thank you," he hadn't thought it would mean anything beyond gratitude. Now, it seemed that moment had started something far greater than he understood. He slipped on his uniform jacket, checked the small communicator on his wrist, and looked once more around his cabin. Every instinct told him to refuse, to demand an explanation, maybe even to run. But the faces of the guards haunted him, solemn, serious, almost reverent. If this law of gratitude was sacred to their people, his refusal could cause more than offense. It could start a diplomatic disaster between species. When the guards returned, Elias stood tall. "All right," he said. "Take me to your princess." They led him through the corridors of the alien vessel docked alongside his ship. The walls shimmered with soft blue light, alive with strange patterns that pulsed like veins. The air smelled faintly of metal and flowers. He could hear distant music, slow and haunting, echoing from somewhere deep within. At the end of the long hallway, a pair of massive doors opened silently, revealing a chamber filled with mist and moonlight. Elias stepped inside, his heart steady but uncertain. He didn't know what waited for him beyond that threshold, only that the night ahead would change everything. The chamber was vast and glowing, built from crystal that shimmered like frozen light. Strange symbols moved across the walls, glowing softly in rhythm with Elias's heartbeat. It was quiet but not empty. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound carried weight. Elias walked forward slowly, the 3 alien guards behind him. At the far end stood a tall figure wearing a white veil, her hands folded before her. Even from a distance, Elias could feel a kind of energy around her, something calm yet powerful, like a storm that had learned to be still. When she lifted her head, He saw her face clearly for the first time since the rescue. Her skin glowed faintly blue, smooth as moonlight. Her eyes were bright silver, deep and reflective, filled with the kind of sadness that came from centuries of being watched, obeyed, and never truly known. She was the princess, the one whose life he had saved. "Captain Elias Ward," she said softly, her voice clear but trembling slightly. "You have come." Elias bowed his head a little. "I didn't have much of a choice, Your Highness. Your guards were persuasive." The princess gave a faint smile, almost a flicker of one. "They only follow the law. And the law binds me, too." He stepped closer, the light of the room reflecting in his eyes. "Then maybe you can explain this law to me, because right now, I have no idea what's going on. One moment I'm saving lives. The next I'm told I must please a princess." Her expression softened. "It sounds wrong in your tongue. Our language has no word for please in that way. The real word means to bring peace to another's spirit. It is a bond, not a demand." Elias blinked. "So this isn't about physical pleasure?" She laughed quietly, though there was no mockery in it. "No, Captain. It is not that simple. You saved my life. According to the law of gratitude, I must now share my essence, my memories, my emotions with you. And in return, you must share yours. Only then will balance be restored between us," he frowned. "That sounds deeply personal." "It is," she said softly. "Our ancestors believed that saving a life binds two souls. It cannot be left incomplete. Without the sharing, the one who was saved carries an eternal debt. And debts destroy hearts." Elias studied her face. She looked calm, but her hands trembled ever so slightly. He could tell she wasn't used to speaking like this, not to anyone, especially not a human. "Do you want this?" he asked quietly. "Not because of your law, but because you want it?" Her silver eyes met his. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then she whispered, "I want to understand the man who risked everything for a stranger." That answer silenced him. The princess turned and motioned toward a raised platform in the center of the room. A floating crystal sphere hovered there, pulsing with gentle light. "This is the heart mirror," she said. "When two touch it, it opens the path between minds. It shows who we truly are, no lies, no walls." Elias hesitated, staring at the sphere. "You've done this before?" She shook her head. "Never. Royal blood is not meant to share its memories with outsiders. But you are no ordinary outsider." He took a slow breath, feeling the weight of her words. No ordinary outsider. The phrase carried warmth and danger both. As he stepped closer to the sphere, he felt his pulse quicken. "What happens if I refuse?" he asked quietly. "Then I must bear the burden of a broken law," she said. "My people will see it as shame. I will lose my title, perhaps my freedom, and you will never be allowed to leave our world alive." Elias sighed deeply, rubbing the back of his neck. "So either I do this, or we both lose something we can't afford." "Yes," she whispered. For a long moment, neither spoke. The chamber's light dimmed, leaving only the glow of the heart mirror between them. Elias could feel its warmth pulling at his chest like a heartbeat. Finally, he nodded. "All right. If this means peace for you and maybe understanding between our people, then I'll do it." The princess's eyes softened. "You honor me, Captain." When he reached out, his fingers brushed hers by accident. The contact sent a strange wave of energy up his arm, and not pain, but something else. Something alive. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, two worlds seemed to breathe together. And in that quiet moment, Elias Ward realized this wasn't just alien law. It was the beginning of something neither of them truly understood. A bond deeper than words, older than stars. The heart mirror floated between them, glowing like a living moon. The light was soft but deep, pulsing with quiet energy that filled the room with warmth. Elias stood across from the princess, his hand hovering just above the sphere. He could feel its pull as if it wanted to draw the truth out of him. The princess watched him carefully. "Once we touch it together, there will be no secrets," she said softly. "You will see my memories, and I will see yours. Are you certain?" Elias nodded, though a small part of him trembled inside. "I've been through worse," he said with a faint smile. "Let's find out what this really means." When their hands met on the glowing surface, the world around them vanished. The chamber dissolved into light, and suddenly, Elias felt weightless, floating in a vast sea of shimmering stars. The princess was there beside him, her body made of light and motion, her voice echoing directly in his mind. "Do not fight it," she whispered gently. "Let it show you." And then the visions began. He saw through her eyes a world of silver oceans and floating palaces. He saw a young girl standing alone on a balcony while servants bowed from afar. She looked lonely even as the sun bathed her in gold. He felt her emotions: isolation, duty, fear. She had been born into a cage made of beauty. He saw her father, a towering figure dressed in royal armor, speaking to her in a voice that held no kindness. "You will not touch the stars," he said. "You will rule them." She had never known laughter, only lessons. Never known love, only loyalty. Every moment of her life had been watched, measured, judged. The people called her divine, but she felt hollow inside, a symbol, not a person. Elias's chest tightened as he felt her pain. He wanted to reach out to comfort her, but he was only a witness in her memory. He saw her as a child sneaking into the royal hangar at night, gazing at the sky through the viewport, whispering to herself, "I want to see what's out there. I want to be free." Then the image shifted again. The storm near Titan, the shuttle shaking violently, alarms screaming, the crew shouting. He felt her fear, the moment when she realized she was going to die. And then, him. He appeared in her, memory like a flash of light. His ship cutting through chaos, his hand steady on the controls, his voice calm over the comm. "Hold on. I've got you." To her, that moment wasn't just rescue. It was the first time someone had spoken to her with care, not command. He had seen her not as a princess, but as a life worth saving. The light faded slowly, and Elias felt himself return to the present. The chamber reappeared around them, though the air now shimmered with emotion. The princess stood only a few steps away, her eyes filled with tears that glistened like tiny stars. "You saw everything," she whispered. Elias nodded. His voice was quiet, almost breaking. "You were just a child, and they never let you live." She looked down. "It is my duty to serve, not to live. That is what I was taught." He took a step closer, his hand trembling slightly. "That's not living, princess. That's surviving. There's a difference." Her gaze lifted to his, soft but uncertain. "And what do you live for, Captain?" Elias hesitated. Memories flickered in his mind. Battles fought, friends lost, long nights staring into the dark between stars. "I live because someone has to make sure others don't die alone," he said. "Maybe that's all I know how to do." The princess smiled faintly, though her eyes were still wet. "Then maybe that is why the stars sent you to me." They stood in silence for a long moment, the only sound the faint hum of the heart mirror behind them. The connection between them hadn't broken. It lingered, alive and gentle, linking their feelings like a thread of light. For the first time in her life, the princess felt something new. Not duty, not law, but warmth. And for Elias, who had spent years drifting between stars with only his ship for company, that same warmth began to heal something inside him too. When the mirror's light finally dimmed, she spoke again. "The law says I must share my heart so that I may find peace. But I think I have found something else instead." Elias tilted his head. "And what's that?" Her voice trembled, but her smile grew. "Hope." The glow around them faded, leaving only silence. But it was no longer cold. Somewhere deep inside both of them, the bond had already begun to change into something far greater than the law ever intended. And though neither said it aloud, they both knew. This night was only the beginning. The chamber was silent long after the heart mirror dimmed. The air still shimmered faintly, holding the echo of what had just happened. Elias stood there quietly, his hands trembling slightly, his heart beating too fast. He could still feel the princess's emotions within him, soft, distant, but real. It was as if a piece of her soul had stayed with him. The princess looked fragile now. Her strength, her royal calm, it had all fallen away. She stood by the glowing platform, her silver eyes lowered. "You saw everything," she whispered. "My loneliness, my fear. Even the things I tried to bury." Elias took a slow breath. "Yeah," he said softly. "But I also saw your courage. You survived all that. You kept going." Her lips trembled. "I had to. My people need their princess to be perfect. I was never allowed to fail or cry or wish for more." He walked closer, stopping just a step away. "Then maybe it's time someone reminded them that even a princess is allowed to feel." She looked up at him, startled by the gentleness in his voice. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Without fear, without distance. The guards, the servants, the council, they all treated her like a symbol, not a person. But Elias, he saw her. "You speak like no one I've met," she said quietly. "Humans are strange." Elias smiled faintly. "We're simple, I guess. We feel things too deeply. We make mistakes. But we keep caring anyway." The princess's eyes softened. But before she could answer, the chamber doors opened. The sound was sharp and cold, breaking the moment between them. 5 figures entered, tall elders in flowing robes that shimmered like liquid glass. Their faces were calm, but their eyes held judgment. The princess straightened immediately, her expression changing from warmth to royal composure. The eldest elder spoke, his voice deep and echoing. "The ritual has begun, but the readings show an imbalance. Your bond with the human is unusual." Elias frowned. "Unusual how?" The elder's gaze turned to him, sharp as a blade. "You are not one of us, human. The heart mirror records emotional resonance. Yours is too strong. You risk merging your essence with hers beyond the limits of the ritual. That is forbidden." Elias glanced at the princess. "What does that mean?" She hesitated, then said softly, "If our connection deepens too far, it will not fade after the ritual. It will become permanent. Our minds, our emotions, would stay linked forever." The elder's voice hardened. "Such bonds are not meant to exist between species. It would dishonor the royal line." Elias clenched his jaw. "With all due respect, I didn't choose to be part of this law. But I'm not going to treat her like some ritual object either." Gasps echoed through the chamber. The guards shifted uncomfortably. The elders looked furious. The princess turned toward him, her heart pounding. No one had ever dared speak to them like that. "Enough," the eldest said coldly. "The law of gratitude must remain sacred. You will complete the ritual as written. No more, no less." When the elders left, the room felt colder. The princess stood still, her hands clenched tightly at her sides. "They fear what they don't understand," she said softly. Elias looked at her. "And what do you fear?" She hesitated before whispering, "That they might be right. If this bond doesn't fade, I could lose everything. My crown, my people's trust." He stepped closer. "And if you break it?" Her eyes glistened with tears. "Then I lose you." Elias didn't know what to say. He had come here thinking he was just following orders, trapped by an alien custom. But now, standing before her, he realized it was more than that. Somewhere between the light and silence, he had started to care. He reached out slowly, brushing his fingers against her hand. "You shouldn't have to choose between your duty and your heart," he said. She trembled at his touch. "My people would never understand." "Then teach them," he said. "Show them that the law they worship can change, that it can grow, just like you." Her silver eyes locked with his. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The world outside seemed to fade. The walls, the guards, even the stars. There was only the warmth of that single touch and the unspoken promise between them. At last, the princess whispered, "Tomorrow night, the final phase of the ritual begins. Once it ends, our bond will either fade or become eternal." Elias nodded slowly. "Then I guess tomorrow decides everything." As he turned to leave, she called out softly, "Elias." He stopped, looking back at her. "Thank you," she said, her voice shaking. "Not for saving my life, but for seeing me." He smiled, a small, quiet smile. "That's what humans do best, Princess. We see what others ignore." When he left the chamber, the princess stood alone beneath the pale glow of the heart mirror, her heart heavy but alive for the first time in years. Tomorrow, the law would test them both. And this time, Elias Ward wasn't going to follow it. He was going to change it. The next night arrived too soon. The alien moon hung heavy in the sky, painting silver light through the glass walls of the royal hall. Everything felt colder. The princess stood alone before the heart mirror, wearing a long robe that shimmered like a field of stars. Her eyes, usually calm and bright, looked tired, like someone carrying both hope and fear in the same breath. She had not slept. All night her mind had been full of human words. You shouldn't have to choose between your duty and your heart. Those words haunted her, not because they scared her, but because they made her feel alive. When the chamber doors opened, Captain Elias Ward entered with slow, steady steps. His uniform was clean, his hair neatly tied, but his face carried exhaustion. The guards followed him only halfway and then stopped, letting him walk the rest of the distance alone. The princess turned to him, and for a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them said more than any greeting could. "You came," she said softly. "I said I would," he replied. "Besides, I couldn't let you face this alone." Her eyes softened, but she quickly turned away, hiding the emotion behind royal calm. "Tonight the final phase begins. Once it's done, the bond between us will either fade away or last forever. You must be prepared." Elias looked at the glowing sphere between them, the heart mirror pulsing like a living thing. "And what do you want?" he asked gently. "Do you want it to fade?" The princess didn't answer. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. "I want to be free, but I don't know what that means anymore." Before Elias could respond, the great doors opened again. The 5 elders entered, their robes sweeping across the crystal floor. Behind them, the royal court stood in silence, dozens of eyes watching. The air was thick with tension. "The final ritual will begin now," said the eldest elder coldly. "The human and the princess will complete the law of gratitude. Once the connection is sealed, the human will return to his ship and depart our world forever." Elias looked at the princess. She said nothing. Her hands trembled slightly, but she stood tall. The elder gestured toward the heart mirror. "Begin." Elias stepped forward and placed his hand on the glowing sphere. The princess followed. The moment their palms touched the surface together, light burst through the hall, blinding, powerful, alive. In that instant, Elias felt everything again, her memories, her heart, her fears. But this time something else was different. He could feel her trying to resist. The council had done something, forced the ritual to end the bond rather than complete it. He felt pain, deep and burning, as if someone was pulling a part of him away. The princess gasped, her body shaking. "They're cutting the bond," she cried. "They're forcing it to fade." Elias clenched his teeth, refusing to let go. "No," he said through the pain. "Not like this," the elders shouted, their voices echoing. "Break it. The law must remain pure." The princess's tears fell as the light around them flickered. She could feel his mind slipping away, his warmth fading from her. "Elias, please. You'll die if you resist." He shook his head. "Then so be it," he whispered. "I didn't come here to obey a law. I came here to do what's right." And then he did something no one had ever done before, and he pushed his own essence into the heart mirror. The light exploded, flooding the entire hall with a glow so bright it turned night into day. Everyone shielded their eyes as energy filled the air. The princess screamed his name, but his voice came calm and steady through the storm. "Your people made a law to show gratitude," he said. "But you forgot what gratitude really means. It's not about duty. It's about love. About connection. About seeing someone and choosing them not because you must but because you want to." The heart mirror cracked, its light now golden instead of blue. The elders stepped back in shock as waves of energy spread outward, touching everyone in the hall. For a brief moment they all felt it, human emotion. The warmth, the pain, the courage. It moved through them like a heartbeat from another world. When the light finally faded, Elias collapsed to his knees, breathing hard. The princess ran to him, catching him before he fell. "Elias, speak to me." He smiled weakly. "Guess I broke your law, huh?" Tears rolled down her cheeks as she held him close. "No," she whispered. "You changed it." The heart mirror was gone, shattered completely, but in its place a soft glow surrounded them both. The bond hadn't been destroyed. It had become something new, something the Vereen had never seen before. The elders stood speechless. The people bowed their heads, not in fear, but in awe. The princess looked down at him, her voice trembling. "Why would you risk your life for me?" Elias smiled faintly. "Because sometimes breaking the rules is the only way to save someone's heart." Her fingers tightened around his hand. In that moment, she didn't care about crowns or titles or law. She only saw the man who had defied an empire for her. And in the quiet after the storm, the princess realized something the law had never taught. Love doesn't come from duty. It comes from choice. The hall was silent. The light from the shattered heart mirror still shimmered faintly on the walls, glowing like the last breath of a dying star. Smoke curled upward, and the air smelled of warm ozone and tears. Elias lay weakly in the princess's arms, his breathing shallow but steady. His face was pale yet peaceful, like a man who had given everything and asked for nothing in return. The princess held him tightly, her silver tears falling onto his uniform. Around them, the royal court stood frozen, unsure whether to be afraid or amazed. No one had ever seen the heart mirror break before. No one had ever seen the law itself bend. The eldest elder finally spoke, his voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "He has corrupted the sacred bond. The mirror is destroyed and the law with it." The princess rose slowly, her arms still supporting Elias. Her expression was calm, but her eyes burned with new strength. "No," she said. "He has freed it." The elder took a step forward, his robe dragging across the cracked floor. "You dare defend him? This human has violated our most ancient custom. He should be executed for his defiance." At his words, the guards raised their weapons, the energy blades humming faintly in the heavy silence. Elias stirred weakly in her arms. "So this is how it ends?" he whispered, his voice rough but calm. The princess turned to the guards, her tone sharp like thunder. "Stand down." They hesitated. For the first time, the royal guards didn't know whom to obey. The princess's authority had always been bound by the law, but the law itself was now broken. "Do as I command," she said again, her voice softer but filled with unshakable power. "He is under my protection." The guards slowly lowered their weapons. The elder shouted, "You risk our empire for a single human." The princess turned toward him, her gaze cold but steady. "This human risked his life to save me, not once but twice. When your law demanded obedience, he gave us truth instead. You speak of corruption, elder, but I see purity. You speak of dishonor, but I see courage." Her voice carried through the hall like a song of defiance. "If this is treason, then I accept it." Elias tried to stand, but his legs trembled. She helped him up gently. "You shouldn't waste your strength," she whispered. He smiled weakly. "Can't let you fight all of them alone, can I?" She gave a faint laugh, half tear, half smile. "You humans. Always so stubborn." He shrugged softly. "We call it heart," the court murmured among themselves. Some of the nobles looked ashamed, others curious. They had felt the warmth of the mirror's final light. They had felt the humans' emotions, the love, the pain, the compassion. It had touched something deep inside them, something their race had long forgotten. Finally, one of the younger council members spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "Perhaps the law was never meant to be unchanging." The elder turned sharply. "You question the foundation of our people?" "I question what we have become," the young one replied. "This human showed us that the law's meaning has faded. It was meant to honor life, not control it." The chamber filled with whispers. The princess took a step forward, holding Elias's hand tightly. "You see?" she said softly. "He did not destroy our law. He reminded us what it was supposed to be." For a long time, no one spoke. Then slowly the guards dropped to one knee. The council members followed one by one, bowing their heads to the princess and the human standing beside her. The eldest elder, defeated, turned away in silence. Elias looked at the princess, his vision blurring. "Looks like they're listening." She squeezed his hand. You changed them, Elias, you changed us, he smiled faintly. Guess I really did please the princess after all. She laughed softly, tears still shining in her eyes. Yes, she whispered. More than you will ever know. That night, the empire began to change. The law of gratitude was rewritten, no longer a demand of obedience, but a celebration of connection. The ritual of pleasing became a ritual of understanding, where hearts shared truth instead of submission. And though the stars outside still burned as they always had, something brighter had awakened within their people, the memory of compassion. As for Elias, he recovered slowly under the care of alien healers. The princess visited him every day, bringing light, laughter, and stories of her world's new dawn. Sometimes when she sat beside him, she would reach for his hand without saying a word. And each time their hearts would still echo the same warmth that had broken the heart mirror, a bond not of law, but of love. The universe was vast and cold, but in that moment, beneath the glowing skies of a foreign world, two souls had found something eternal. Weeks passed. The wounds healed, but the memories never faded. The capital of the alien empire no longer looked the same. The halls that once echoed with strict rules and hollow ceremonies now glowed with warmth and music. Laughter returned to the palace, something it had not known for centuries. But for Elias, the greatest change was quieter. Each morning, he walked with the princess through the royal gardens that floated high above the silver sea. The light reflected off the water and painted her face in gold. She no longer wore the heavy crown of her people, just a simple silver band, and a smile that no longer seemed lonely. I still can't believe they accepted it, Elias said one morning as they walked along the marble path. The princess smiled softly. They did not accept me, Captain. They accepted what you showed them. That strength does not come from power, but from kindness, he chuckled. Kindness doesn't usually win wars. She turned to him, her eyes shining like the stars she once longed to see. No, but it wins hearts, and that is far harder. They both stopped by the edge of the garden where the sky shimmered with the faint glow of distant worlds. Ships rose and fell from the city below, carrying diplomats and explorers. A new era had begun, one built not on fear but trust. Still, Elias knew his time there was coming to an end. His ship, the Orion's Grace, was repaired and waiting in the hangar. The Galactic Council wanted him to return to human space, to report what had happened. He had delayed the departure for days, but deep down, he knew he couldn't stay forever. That evening, when the stars returned and the twin moons hung low over the horizon, he found the princess standing alone on the balcony. The wind carried her silver hair softly around her face. She didn't turn when she heard his footsteps. "You're leaving," she said quietly. Elias paused behind her. "Yeah, the council needs answers, and Earth needs to know peace with your people is possible." Her voice was soft but steady. "And what of us?" He looked down, struggling to find the right words. "You know how space is. It doesn't stop for anyone. I don't want to leave, but maybe some things aren't meant to stay in one place." The princess turned then, her expression tender but sad. "Do you regret what happened?" He shook his head immediately. "Not for a second," she smiled faintly. "Then neither do I." They stood together in silence for a long time, watching the stars. The air between them felt heavy with all the words they couldn't say. At last, the princess reached out and touched his hand. "You changed my world, Elias, you changed me. I once believed love was weakness. Now I see it as the greatest strength we have." Elias squeezed her hand gently. "You didn't need me to find that. It was always in you. You just needed someone to remind you." Tears glimmered in her eyes, but she smiled through them. "Then let me remind you of something too." She leaned closer, pressing her forehead lightly against his. "No matter how far you travel, the stars will remember you. And so will I," he smiled, his throat tight. "Guess that's enough for me." The next morning, the launch platform was filled with quiet faces, nobles, guards, and citizens who had once called him an intruder. Now they bowed in respect as he walked by. The princess stood at the front, her royal cloak fluttering in the soft wind. She didn't speak as he approached, only handed him a small object, a fragment of the shattered heart mirror, polished into a crystal pendant. "It still glows," she said. "It carries the memory of what we shared. Keep it close, Captain. Let it guide you." He took it carefully, his fingers brushing hers. "I'll bring it back someday," he said. Promise, her eyes softened. I will wait, not as your princess, but as your friend. When Elias stepped into his ship and the engines began to hum, he looked through the viewport one last time. The princess stood there, small against the vast sky yet brighter than everything around her. The ship lifted slowly, rising higher and higher until the city became a sea of light beneath him. As he broke through the clouds and the stars opened before him, he felt the pendant glow faintly against his chest. He smiled. The universe was wide, endless and cold, but somewhere out there, warmth existed, hope existed, and love, the kind that crossed galaxies and laws, still lived in two hearts that had once met by fate. The stars shimmered around him, whispering softly like distant music, and Elias whispered back, almost to himself, her species masters starships, but she mastered my heart. Then the Orion's grace jumped into light, leaving behind a trail that glowed like a promise that someday, among the stars, their paths would meet again.